always be aware of how you talk about people and your frustration. I was setting up these microphones for a meeting at Pixar, and none of the mics are working. And so I start complaining. This person set this meeting up at the last minute, and I'm bad-mouthing. Pete Doctor, I just love him. He's fantastic. He comes in and he goes, "Hey, JTop, everyone in the building can hear you."
Lesson learned. Today we're going to talk about something spooky. We're going to talk about horror genre in video games. And today we're going to have an amazing guest, Jason Topolski, who is a creative director and co-founder of Steel Wool Studios, the team behind major entries in the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. From Help Wanted to Security Breach, Steel Wool has played massive role in taking FNAF from cult indie success to a global horror icon. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Nana. How's it going?
Well, I hope by the end of this episode, everybody gonna have a playbook of how to break through in horror. Because Jason's background spans Pixar, Telltale, improv comedy, making splashes in board game design, voice acting, and directing. So like a lot of different things. And today in this interview, we're going to explore why horror is exploding across games, film, and TV, why players love being scared, why horror is one of the most accessible genres for small teams, and how Steel Wool designs dense, layered, emotionally resonant horror worlds. If you like what we do, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and let's build this industry together so we all avoid the same mistakes and just focus on building cooler stuff. Recently, I've met like 4 horror game publishers, and everyone were telling me like, if you want to start an indie game studio, horror is your genre to start because it's the easiest to break through into, to make a splash. And I was like, wait, what? I have to like... How's that work?
It's funny because that is the same as in film and television. It's just basically horror is a good gateway to get into the industry, pretty much on all levels, right? It's in general, horror tends to be like more personal. It tends to be a little bit cheaper, especially when you're doing film. A couple actors go out to the woods with the camera, come up with some creepy mystery, some characters, some slash or whatever. And you can make really relatively inexpensive material and come up, as long as you have like a good hook and a compelling story or mystery or killer, right? It really is a great way to get into the industry.
Steel Wool has such a unique trajectory from a small indie collective to the studio behind some of the most impactful entries in the games in the FNAF universe. How do you describe Steel Wool's creative identity, especially when it comes to horror games?
The way Steel Wool started is there was a small group of us that all worked together at Pixar Animation Studios. And at Pixar, we were doing lots of, everything's family projects. And we all had like our own identity as well. We were never going to do anything horror. We were never going to do anything really scary. We wanted to try our own stuff. And on the side, we did what's called a carve out. So we could do a project on the side. And we did a 2D side scroller game called Fly Hunter, which wasn't horror, but it was us playing around with our own characters, trying our own, our hand in games. And we decided at one point to leave the studio and take that on full time. Which was like a really, really big risk, and it was a lot of fun.
It sounds like a horror movie on its own.
Oh yeah, so I'll be right back. So I went over to Telltale to get more experience working in games, like directly in games. Like they were doing The Walking Dead, the Telltale series. There was so much cool stuff going on because it was like games but movies combined, which I absolutely loved. Well, a couple of the other guys were doing full-time Steel Wool. And we were lucky that in California, we were the first ones to try out some of the early headsets for VR. And we were showing that off to some of the other studios. We had like the Vive, we had like the HoloLens at one point. We were getting into VR at that time. So that was kind of like this intro to the industry. We're like, hey, you know what? Here's something that's unique, nobody else is doing right now. Maybe that's our thing, not this like side scroller that we're playing around with, right? When we got into VR, we started playing around with the environments. We made a puzzle game called Bounce, which we were making very moody, right? And it's that kind of like liminal space horror where it's like a fun puzzle game, but there's actually some like underlying tragedy behind the whole game. If you ever play it, spoiler alert, you're basically destroying the universe and you don't know it, which is a lot of fun. But so when we were getting into VR, what we were finding is the most personal experiences were putting yourself into like a scary environment. Even when you're standing next to a character that's a little taller than you, it's pretty horrifying. So we started like pitching around some ideas. There was one that we had done for an idea for a Lionsgate project that I really wish we could have done, but that didn't get picked up. But they came back to us later and said, "Hey, you guys like horror. You're good at horror, and your VR stuff is great. We've got this guy, Scott Cawthon, who does Five Nights at Freddy's, and he's looking to do a VR game. You guys want to meet?" And that's where it took off from there. And we showed him a demo we basically made the first game, Five Nights 1, before we met to show him like, hey, here's what we can do. Look at the environment. Look at how scary this is, And that was it. From that point on, like that really like, it was a really good way to like get in, show him what we could do and how his material came across in VR. And it was terrifying. People put the headset on and they're like, no, I'm not doing this. I can't do this. It's too scary.
I have some clients that are like, oh, we're doing this horror VR game. You want to try? I'm like,
yeah.
No.
No. But it's a lot of fun to watch other people play.
Yes, 100%. But I also, like, reflecting what you just shared, I always tell my team, like, look, if we didn't get a pitch, it doesn't mean that's the relationship is over. And which I really love what you shared is like, keep pitching. And even if that doesn't work out, when people see what's your identity and how you approach stuff, when the right opportunity will come, they'll be like, oh, what about those Steel Wool guys? Should we send this? I think this is a fit. So I really love that. And so Steel Wool has moved from small projects to shaping global horror franchise. What do you think enabled the rise? Like, what defines your approach to horror as a studio in general?
Personally, I think what shapes our identity is that we love horror. I've been a big horror fan since I was little, when my parents wouldn't let me watch horror. But then I'd sneak out in the living room and watch, my parents watching Poltergeist, and hiding under the couch, like watching from the side. Like, I was always into horror. The very first like videos used to make in like the 80s. My dad was an art school teacher, right? He had a video camera and we'd take it from his school and then we'd go out, make a bunch of fake blood, and then we would shoot our own like horror films, right? It's just a couple of us. We'd like run around with the camera, make these terrible movies. We got the Tom Savini blood recipe, from an effects book.
Oh my God.
And then
you had an effects book.
Oh yeah, because my parents wouldn't let my brother and I like watch any horror like when we were little. So of course, what do we do instead? It's like, oh, we go and get books that talk about how to make horror effects. So how to hit someone with a car, at low speeds, how to like make blood effects. So basically my entire life, I was always into horror. And so as we got into like film, games, getting into VR, it's like this is the perfect way to express like that love of horror and putting someone in like a haunted house in a VR headset and going like, we can scare you, we can spook you. How many different ways? Just even a simple sound effect, people are like, oh my God, what was that? What was that? Oh, I don't know, And watching that experience, like I used to run like haunted houses like back in like high school as well, and so wanting to bring that to games and to VR especially, that's where it just fit. It was just a perfect fit.
I actually a couple of years ago saw randomly an episode of Poltergeist, and I remember vividly that episode from a kid of this like crazy scary creature coming out in this cave, and like in this part of the episode, seeing it as an adult, I could see the wheels underneath the creature of them like being pushed out, and I was like, I'm like, wait, it looked different in my memory. It was the scariest thing. And then I saw Poltergeist as an adult and I was like, um, room for imagination, I guess.
When you're little, like what the theater of the mind, what's in your head is definitely worse than what's on screen. I had a friend that would get to see everything, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and he'd describe what he saw in the movies to us. And all the kids on the block, like we couldn't see it, but he saw it. And then he would describe what he said, and there was like way worse inside your head. And then you see the movie, and it's like, oh, that was cheesy. Oh my God. Oh, I know how they did that. Oh, that's what, and there's like a fake arrow and they push the thing through. It's like, oh, whatever. Like you can see like the latex. Oh, and then everything's really silly, but it's way worse the way you think about it.
Let's talk about genre level conversation, right? So
Yeah.
horror is one of the few genres where small teams can truly break through. Like, why is horror
Yeah.
such an accessible entry point for indie or for first time creators?
You're trying to get your viewer or your player, whoever's experiencing, to feel something, right? Fear is a great start. If you start getting into like emotional, like romantic romance, comedies harder, anything else that you put on tape that you're recording, it might come off as like really silly or cheesy or like you don't understand it. It's a little bit harder to get into, to really like write a good script. If you can come up with a good catch, like, I always love the movie Cabin in the Woods. It's like, hey, there's some teens. They're ignoring the warnings, the harbingers there saying, don't go into the woods, don't go to the woods, don't go to that cabin, right? But they do it anyway. And then something's going to happen. Something terrible is going to happen. What do you bring to that? What are you scared of? Like, oh, you're scared of spiders? Great. Do a story about spiders. Even like even Stephen King, like
So terrified of spiders.
Right?
You don't even start me, And then I recently learned that onto Mayan calendar, my sign is a spider. I'm like, great.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So like you look at like Stephen King taking like a fear of spiders and how that kind of like creates the story of it, right? And by the end of it, I was a giant space spider, right? That's how you write what's personal to you, and what scares you will come across to the viewer or the player, whoever's experiencing it. And if you do something that's a little surprising, which is very easy to do in horror because you don't have to stick to like, reality. If you're doing a period piece, and everybody's supposed to be dressed like, oh, this is the Middle Ages, and there's like this party or whatever, and your costumes look bad. Everybody's looking at it. They're like, that's terrible. This is awful. That doesn't work. Like, yeah, this is a garbage movie or garbage. It looks so awful. But in horror, you just take, what are you wearing right now? Cool, that's what I'm wearing in this story. A thing happens in my house. Something spooky is happening. I'm alone late at night. And it just kind of, you can build on these and you can make your own, you're going to fail all the time. Fail over and over and over and over again until something hits. Horror is easy to make something, throw it away, make something, throw it away, and then find something that really connects with people. And they're like, ooh, that was a creepy idea. That was good. Like you should stick with that,
So if I echo correctly, what you were saying, the element of surprise is essentially easier to create and what defines horror as a genre. Am I understanding that correctly? Or
I think so, especially for like the more successful pieces. Like when you go into a film or a game and you're like, oh, I know how this ends. Right? You go to a shooter, you go play a shooter, right? You're not there really for the story. There'll be story modes, but it's like, I want to play Call of Duty. Well, I'm really here to like play with my friends, run around, form a team, do tactics, and then we're going to kill the other team. But if you go into like a Silent Hill or, Resident Evil, right? Or an indie project, you're like, okay, well, I'm familiar with the genre, but what are you going to do that's different this time? I don't know what's going to happen when this starts. And then the story develops and you're like, oh, this is different. Or you get the twist. Oh, I didn't expect that. Like Silent Hill 2 is one of my favorite games ever. I think that like redefined, the video game horror genre. It's like, this is like psychological horror as a video game. And it's really well done. It's amazing. If people haven't played it, please, the remaster is really, really good.
I have memories of playing Resident Evil when I was a kid, and it's like literally the scariest thing. And I hooked up to a flat screen recently, my Sony PlayStation 1, and it was just like pixel art where the zombie had a red dot on the head, and that was the zombie. And I was like, wait, in my head, it was a completely different experience. So I'm 100% with you when it comes to like imagination stuff. So on the audience side, the horror is booming as well. Like, why do you think people actively seek out fear right now? What need does horror satisfy that other genres don't? And speaking for myself, I haven't watched a horror movie since I was 13. So I'm not going to tell how old I am, but it's been a while.
I want to say it's more accessible to pretty much everyone. Fear is very accessible. If you sit down and watch something, that's a drama and it doesn't connect with you immediately, you might put it aside. Like, this isn't for me. People that don't like big budget films, I don't like this. This is too big special effects or whatever. If people aren't into like Marvel, then you don't want to watch the Marvel movies. Maybe you don't want to watch superheroes. Horror has so many subgenres within horror. It's a huge, huge, broad category. You can have comedy horror. You can have the really gore horror, right? Like if you watch something like Hostel, that's a very different film than like Evil Dead 2, right? So you can find like your niche within the horror genre. If it's like, it's jump scares. Jump scares are scary. Maybe that's not what scares you. Maybe it's like somebody being trapped in a room, like Serpent in the Rainbow or something, being buried alive. That's the horror. That's the thing that scares you. It's different for everyone and it's personal. We've seen that, in like some of our play tests when we were playing Help Wanted early on. We had a professor in art college that was with the group that was playing, and she was like, jump scares don't get me. Now the dark hall, none of this gets me. But then some bugs came out, and she was like, bugs. No, I don't want bugs. I don't want bugs, right? So you're trying to find the thing that scares everybody, and you can search out the things that scare you. It's such a broad category. So horror on the whole has been very successful, I think, because people are playing around with those rules too. If you watched Weapons, it's great.
It's not happening. Like, I can have a educated conversation about it, but there's no chance on earth I'm going to watch a horror movie. Like, I work with outsourcing every day. So like, I live horror. Like, I don't want more stress after I come from work. I don't feel like it's a relief for me. So,
and some people it is. It's like you want the horror to get the stress, reduce the stress. That's worse than my life.
It's
right?
Confusing. It's confusing.
Like, have you watched like Silence of the Lambs?
Yes, I actually did. Traumatized me as a kid.
Right, Silence of the Lambs, horror, award-winning horror. You had Jodie Foster. This is like Academy Award-winning horror, as opposed to like Leprechaun or something where it's just like throwaway, goofy. Chucky has like really big like hits and misses. Sometimes it's really silly. Sometimes it's like super horrifying, right? Really intense. I like going to the Evil Dead series, which was one of my. Here, I actually have. There's a box set. There's a plug for Evil Dead 2, the DVD set. Evil Dead's a funny one because every movie feels like a different genre within horror. Sometimes they're serious, sometimes they're not. Like the first Evil Dead was banned in some countries. So when Sam Raimi did the sequel, he redid the first movie, but then he made it funny. It's very slapstick, but still horror with, and then they're like, oh, how about no red blood? Let's just do every other color than blood. It's like black and green and purple and everything. And it ends up being really silly and tongue-in-cheek. But then a couple movies later, they'll go back to, Resident Evil, like somebody's cutting their tongue open and stuff. And they're like, oh my God, this is horrible, body horror. And then they'll go back to silly,
Let's talk about FNAF and many modern horror twists, like twist innocence, right? So mascots, arcades, childhood spaces into dread. Why does this kind of like corrupt innocent work so well as a horror vehicle?
They've been doing that forever. That has been like a horror trope for a very long time. You go back to creepy dolls, right? Hey, if there's something that creeps you out from your childhood, Stephen King did a lot too. Like, if something creeps you out from your childhood, and then you bring that into modern horror and make it scarier, just a doll alone, right? Then you get like the whole Annabelle series, right? There's so many creepy dolls. There's a movie called Dolls, right? The horror movie. Anything that bothered you when you were little or you thought was off-putting, clowns. Oh, clowns are fun, right? Clowns are fun. And you look back at them, it's like, that's horrifying. Chuck E. Cheese, animatronics, the uncanny valley, like dead look. When Scott got to a certain age, it's like, hey, guess what? This was creepy when I was little. Pull that in and then showcase that as like modern horror. And you'll see a lot of stuff that you were bothered by when you were little, people bring back. And then you'll notice that other people identify with it too. So what was something you were scared to death of when you were little?
Darkness. Whatever is in the closet. You know?
Right. What's in the dark? What's in the closet? So you look at like FNAF 4, where there's a closet right in front of you. And you can walk up to the closet and close the closet, open the closet, and then you have to, that's the gameplay, and you have to open and close it to make sure Foxy's not in the closet there ready to get you, right? It's taking those childhood traumas and making a game out of it. I thought Scott was brilliant with it,
Do you think that's a healing process to some degree?
Yes. That's what a lot of people believe, that is confronting your fears is how you get over it. So the more exposure you have to the thing that you're scared of, it's like a shock therapy. The more exposure you have to the things you're scared of, the less it's going to shock you, the less horrified you're going to be. It's like if you are arachnophobe, like you're scared to death of spiders, get close to one. How close can you get? Can you touch it? Not one that's like a black widow, but it's like
My husband's brother bought himself a tarantula because he
right.
was so terrified of spiders, and he just
Right.
decided to live with it until he like overcomes and like understands the creatures. And I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe one day.
Like one of the ones personally that I had when I was in high school, I was scared to death of like being on stage, right? It's like I didn't like answering the phone when I was little.
Look at you.
I didn't.
Look at you now
I
on
don't like that.
podcast.
Right. So when I was a freshman in high school, I was like, I got to get over this kind of stage fright thing. So I auditioned for a play.
There's a strong comedic undercut in Five Nights at Freddy franchise. The grimmel tone.
Grimsicle.
Grimsicle. Okay,
Grimsicle. Like whimsical, grim whimsy.
Grimsicle.
Yeah.
Why does dark humor actually make horror more effective, not weaker?
It's my favorite type of horror. I love the dark comedy horror, like Evil Dead 2, right? Dale and Tucker versus Evil. These are a lot of fun because I like comedy and I like horror, and it makes it accessible to some people that are like, I just don't want like the movie High Tension where everything is just like right there. It's like everything is just terrifying the whole time, and you're just waiting for the horrible thing to happen. When the horrible thing happens in dark comedies, and then you can laugh at the fact that somebody just accidentally jumped into a chipper shredder, and then it's like, it takes that horror and it makes it so comical. You're like, this is so absurd. It's not scary. It ends up being really funny. And that's, there's a lot of people that really like that genre. There's people that don't. But I think that makes it accessible to certain people that wouldn't enjoy something like Saw or Hostel or, any of the other like body horror films.
Since we're talking about FNAF, I kind of want to go back to Steel Wool overall and how Steel Wool makes horror, right? The craft, the philosophy, the process. Steel Wool is known for calculated detail, dense layered worlds. How do you balance the richness and the clarity when designing horror environments?
I think leaning into the time period helps a lot, especially with Freddys. So if the game's taking place in the 80s, everybody, our sets department, our characters, everyone, we start really deep diving into 80s. what year is this? What does this location have? What's the technology? What do the posters look like? What would a pizza box look like at that time compared to now? And you look at the graphics, you look at the fonts that are used, and then you start finding ways to bring in the history of the space, and then you build a location based on what that place has gone through before. Secret of the Mimic was, I think, that was one of my favorites as far as taking the 70s, bringing a bunch of people that were never around in the 70s, so we have a lot of young employees, and then going over, hey, this is what stuff looked like in the 70s. Look, this were carpets. Here's the colors that you saw everywhere. It was like everyone had like olive carpet and browns and earth tones and like clocks that looked like owls and things. And people wouldn't, it was like, oh, a telephone. Oh no, everything was on a cord. Really? Here's what a cassette tape looks like. Really? No, there's no VHS yet. You had these great big Humatic tapes, you had like all this old technology. And then the more that our crew gets invested in the time period and the fun of the time period, it's like bringing that into the world and decorating the spaces, set dressing, just an office space. Here's like, wood paneling on the walls. There's a creepiness to that. Everything was darker. When you went into a room, it wasn't like white walls and it was lighter. There was low ceilings, kind of dark basement spaces, dark kind of carpets, shag carpets. You look at like the furniture, everything was really big. And we like to say chonky. Like you compare like a computer now to a computer in like the early 80s, very late 70s. And they were just these giant beasts, a television, right? You look at like old CRTs compared to flat screens. You need two people to lift like a big screen, or they'd be built into furniture. So the more that we play with that kind of environment, coming up with like, here's what the 70s looked like, and then how can we make that, give that a backstory? Who was in this room before? Did that person leave in a hurry for some reason? Is that television broken? Well, what did that? Maybe you put something in the room that looks like this fell. Something happened there. Somebody tried to push a file cabinet in front of a door. Why? It wasn't me, somebody else here. If there's scratches on a wall, why? There's a great spot in Mimic where we have a spot in the wall that looks like it's been broken open. And somebody was trying to lift a safety gate, but they didn't do it. They didn't get it in time. So nearby, you can find the actual crank to open it, but it looks like somebody was trying to get out of the room and something burst through the wall to get them. And then you go through that hole in the wall, and then you go and find that crank and come back and open it up. But when you take a step back and you think about what's happening in the space, it's like there was a whole little like horror scene that happened here. And we like to put evidence of what it was that happened. And that's a ton of fun. Our crew loves playing around with that stuff. And then we always try to we'll go and review that. Like Evan, who was the director on that project, reviews every location, reviews every little aspect of the space. And we make sure we're not stepping on something else that doesn't work. Hey, hold on. This story beat here now conflicts with something in the lore. Well, we don't want to do that. Then you get into like lore trouble. Or out of the time period. At one point, somebody said they were dressing sticky notes. They're like, sticky notes. Yeah, sticky notes didn't exist at this point, right? It's like somebody's going to call that sticky notes don't exist.
You've talked about intentional permanent mysteries a lot in your previous interviews, similar to David Lynch. How do you decide what to explain and what to leave unknown?
Some of that I won't be able to talk about. But as far as like horror and mystery goes, I've always preferred to not necessarily give a full answer. You want to give part of an answer or some answer, but you want to leave things a little open to interpretation. back when it's so funny. So because Halloween just happened, right? So I've got all these horror movies stacked next to me, and you say that, and I just happen to have like the Twin Peaks set next to me too. Like David Lynch, Twin Peaks. When Twin Peaks was airing originally, there used to be viewing parties. Everybody would get together and try to figure out what's going on. You know, every episode that would come out, you get some more clues, you get some more information on the mystery that was unraveling. And at the time, it was kind of unheard of to say, here's a series that's about one murder. It's not murder of the week, solve the murder, you know, Murder, She Wrote, Jessica Fletcher. Great, now on to the next, new cast, new characters, new murder, solve it. Where they said, let's stretch this out. And everything is about this one murder. Does it get solved? Is that important? Or is the mystery of what happened and why, and there's things that are just so unusual that don't make sense, that don't necessarily have an explanation. It's that David Lynch, Stephen King, writers, creators that kind of like look to like H.P. Lovecraft, like the indescribable horror. It's like, well, what is it? It's really hard to describe, but it's like something is wrong. It's like the colors seemed odd. There's shapes and things that I can't really describe, and I feel like I'm going mad. That stuff is so interesting to me, and it's been so much fun, rather than saying, oh, and here, let's take the mask off, and who were you really? Scooby-Doo ending. Oh, here, it was Old Man Withers, you know, he wanted the insurance money for the amusement park, right? It's so much more engaging, I think, to not have all the answers. And then you and your friends to get together and you come up with your own theories. It's like, well, what does this mean? And the creators, in their mind, you'll know what it is. You'll have an idea of what you're going towards. But there's like an omission of information that makes it even more exciting to try to figure out.
I feel like I've learned a lot about FNAF and horror genre in general. If I am a newbie to this world and I want to break into and establish my team, or maybe I'm an individual creator, like how do I make myself discoverable in the game that I've created? Is there like easy pathways, like Kickstarter, some forums? Like how do people learn about it?
Some people are going to have an easier time. Some people will find the easy way. But I think persistence is the best way. Keep trying, keep trying, keep working, keep putting yourself out there. It's like what you said early on is you make a connection and then, hey, maybe this pitch didn't work. But somebody remembers, hey, that was a great pitch. I like those people. I liked working with them. And then they come back to you a year, 2 years later. You know, it's a small world. The industry is pretty small. If you treat people well and you've got cool ideas and you just keep trying, you put yourself out there, you say yes to everything. Hey, we need somebody to hold a boom mic. You know, we're doing like a little project. Will you come be on set and just hold the boom for us? Hey, we need an extra stand-in. Can you just be a stand-in? Can you help with this thing? Can you help with cater? Whatever it is, get your foot in the door. Get to know people. And then they'll get to know you. When I was at Pixar Animation, I was AV, right? Systems AV. I was a projectionist. I was repairing like beta decks, you know, setting up crash carts, running, you know, equipment in meetings, Avid, media composer, working in technical microphones, you know, meetings. But my background was theater. I was on stage. I also had a directing background. And I remember people saying just ideas like hanging out. People going, man, you should try to get in the story department. Like, you got some fun ideas. Like, oh, that would be great. Like, why are you in story? It's like, that wasn't my trajectory, right? I was AV, and then I went into production management. And you never know how things are going to come back around later. The experience that I had being like a coordinator in the story department, learning the things they were doing, seeing how they worked, all of that applies to everything I'm doing now. Everything I did before in theater and doing commercials on set, doing whatever it was, everything that you've got, just keep putting yourself out there, keep making connections, keep working, write your ideas down. They can be totally bad. but just keep doing stuff. If you want to make videos, make videos. If you want to make games, go make games. Do tabletop games to get into games.
Didn't you have an experience of like a successful Kickstarter was one of your horror tabletop games?
I did.
How did it work out?
So there was an idea that I had when I was back in high school for like a slasher game. At first, it was just a card game, and I've been telling people for years and working on this thing, and eventually, God, it was maybe 2009, 2010. I had a friend who was an artist at Pixar, and he's like, "Hey, what's that thing on your shelf?" And it was just like this makeshift like tabletop game. I was like, "Oh, it's called Camp Grizzly. It's a 1970s camp slasher board game. When you're all camp counselors and the game's playing against you, there's a killer." And he's like, "What do the characters look like?" And I described to him what my fantasy cast would be. And then within a week, he created the whole line of characters. And he brought them back. Is this what they look like? It's like, yes. And then the two of us together with a couple other friends, we ended up doing a Kickstarter, making the game an actual reality. We did a print run, got really well funded the first time. I have it here. This is Camp Grizzly. This was 5,000 copies of this we did off a Kickstarter that was very successful. Yeah, you can see in the back. So my friend Austin Madison did all the artwork.
When you're saying it was successful, like how did you get discovered on Kickstarter? Like what worked for you?
The way that I did the Camp Grizzly Kickstarter originally was I go to a board game convention in Burlingame, California. It's like just south of San Francisco by the airport. And it's called KublaCon. I've been going there for years. I was with my friend who had a booth doing pewter miniatures. And so while we were doing the booth, I had made a version of the game that was just a prototype. And I started bringing it to the conventions and people played and people liked it. They get notes. And then I did a small print run that was very indie. There were only like 50 copies I did of that to then sell. It was like a black and white version, a lot of rough stand-in art. And then I basically sold all of those out. And people were like, this is great. We like this game. This is fun. Everybody working together to try to survive. And these like horror stories that develop as you're playing. So then when we did the Kickstarter, I was able to show footage of people playing the original game. So here's a version of the game. It exists. People have accounts of playing it. People that had played it at the convention, they bought into the Kickstarter. Friends told friends, and that spread. And then we had a really, really, really well funded, and people really enjoyed it. And I had sold out a few years back. I sold out of all the copies, and it got in touch just this last year with Trick or Treat Studios. You'll see them in lots of stores. They've done like games for Halloween, Chucky. They did Chucky game, House of a Thousand Corpses that just came out this year, and they've got lots of fun stuff. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and so they reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, how come this game isn't available?" It's like, "You want to do a deal?" So they did a Kickstarter, and the second print run is happening. So that is coming in this next year in 2026. So I'm really excited about that. They've done a great job with it. And then Austin and I have been involved updating artwork. Now there's a second side to the board, so there's more material. It's like flip side board, and you get a different gameplay. But it was just because the idea was there since I was a kid. Keep pushing, bring it back, see what people like. And somebody says, "Oh, well, it would be better if you did this," or "I'd like it more of this." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. It's perfect." Don't be that person.
There's definitely certain situations where people give feedback for the purpose of giving feedback. And people also get into that trap. Or like, does that make or break? Because then you end up iterating on stuff that don't make or break the experience. Yeah, they add like 3%, but take you 3 more months to develop. Like, I think there's a fine line there. I love what you shared about your success story. Now, my favorite part of this episode usually is a fail story section. It's time where the guests share a moment that didn't go to plan, but taught them something important so that other people can relate. So what's your fail story, Jason?
Oh my God. It was funny as the one that pops into my mind is such a weird one. It's not a product. It's not a product, right? It's not a game. It's just a moment where it's like, always be aware of how you talk and how you talk about people and your frustration. You don't get angry, right? And it's a hot mic moment, right? And this one was, I was setting up these microphones for a meeting at Pixar Animation Studios, right? There was a meeting going to come in. It was in the main theater, huge space. And there's this rolling cart with microphones. Somebody's going to be on speaking, and lapel mics, handheld mics, everything. And none of the mics are working. I can't hear anything in the room, and it's on a wireless system, right? Can't hear anything. And so I start complaining to my friend John, who was a projectionist that was working with. And I'm like, this person set this meeting up at the last minute. They gave us they didn't tell us in time. We could have had all this running ahead of time. And here we are, the thing starts in like 15 minutes and nothing works and it's all garbage. And this person. And I'm bad-mouthing, right? And then one of our directors walks into the main theater. This guy, Pete Docter, I just love him. He's fantastic. He did like Monsters, Inc. and a bunch of films. He comes in, he goes, Hey, JTop, everyone in the building can hear you. And there was an event that had happened the weekend before this, where somebody else connected the microphones to the overhead paging. And so everybody in the main atrium having their lunch, eating, getting coffee and everything could hear me complaining about another employee. I'm like, oh, dude, I can't believe this. And it's just like, look.
Lesson learned.
Right, lesson learned. It's like keep yourself under control. Try to keep your cool at all times, right? That's one of it's just so embarrassing, but it ended up being very laughable after. It's because then I talked to that person and she was like, yeah, I mean, you were right, but.
Don't talk to me about like.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'll try to let you know ahead of time. But.
Rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you a question and you just need to answer the first thing that comes to mind. Okay? Slasher or psychological?
Psychological.
Story first or mechanics first?
Story first.
Best horror game ever?
Silent Hill 2.
Best horror movie ever?
Evil Dead 2. I'm going with Evil Dead 2.
Classic jump scare or slow burn?
Slow burn.
Foxy or Helpy?
Helpy.
Okay.
No, Foxy. They're two different genres. They're totally two different genres. Foxy for horror, Helpy for comedy.
Jason, this was fantastic. To everyone watching and listening, don't forget to subscribe to Devoted Talks on YouTube. Leave a like, drop a comment, share with friends, and tell us what else do you want to learn about. Jason, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thank you so much. And I guess one last thing I'll say is watch everything. Read everything. Go experience everything you can. You just have a collection of ideas.